Talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. You have tuned in to one of the most popular shows here at Universal Broadcasting Network, Dr. Judy WTF, which for those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, thank you so much. It's What the Freud. And I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and we always have Dr. Judy here because it's Dr. Judy WTF. And last week we did the What the Film. So if you missed it, we did an amazing review of the movie Whiplash and had Ron Payne in studio, a great friend and producer and the music engineer extraordinaire. And the month before, we did those of you interested in WTF is What the Film with 50 Shades of Grey. So we got to work on our next one for next month, and we take reviews and we take suggestions. And you can write us at info@drjudywtf.com, or you can even like us, if you're listening on your computer, please do, at Facebook. And, of course, we're at Twitter, too, at Dr. Judy WTF, and you can listen to us on Stitcher and iTunes. We expect to have a really, really amazing show today, folks, because we're going to be talking about expectations. And later in the show, we're going to shrink a very popular song.
One of my favorites.
I think it was a request by Dr. Judy. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about expectations, mostly in relationships, but in other aspects. And so if you have some expectations that haven't been met, or you think we might just meet your expectations somehow, some way, you can call in. You can get on the couch with Dr. Judy, and I'll stay off and not jump up too much. Number is area code 323-843-2826, right here in the heart of Hollywood.
And so for those of you who've been listening, you might know that I work with a mind map that I created many years ago for healing human disconnect. And so we're going to put the concepts that we're going to be talking about expectations up on the mind map to see how these expectations, when let's say not realistic, end up in chaos and defense mechanisms and break down into out and out wars, or at least verbal wars.
Out and out wars?
Yeah, clashes, breakdowns. Oh. Okay, so what is an expectation? I mean, I have a lot of expectations of myself. I have expectations of people. I have expectations of my country. There are all kinds of expectations. Some of them are implied expectations, like I expect that you're not going to walk out of the studio on me, Walt. Okay, you expect that I'm going to be here sitting in the chair. I mean, there are some expectations that are implied and we don't have to really verbalize. But there are a lot of things that if we don't verbalize, then it could lead to all kinds of trouble, all kinds of miscommunication, all kinds of hurt feelings, and major letdowns. So,
and I want to read between the lines there, Doctor. You said verbalize, which means communication.
Yes,
and I've got a really decent definition of expectations here. If you want me to dive in.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Relationship expectations are simply what you expect from the people in your personal relationships, from your coworkers to your best friend to your spouse. You have expectations of everyone in your life. You expect your boss or your human resources representative to hand you a paycheck every payday. Mm-hmm. You expect your parents to remember to call you on your birthday. You expect your new person you're dating to call or text within a certain time frame after a date. You expect and you set these expectations too high, however, and the person does not meet those standards. It's now gone from expectations to standards. You are the one who winds up feeling sad and angry.
Very much so. And with the work that I do, I come across this theme of expectations all the time, especially when I do couples work. one of the things that happens in couples work is that not only are there expectations between the two people, sometimes there's expectations from one family to the other. So it can get very complicated. And then if there's an extended family, then there are expectations amongst the children and how all of that will coordinate. So I like to think systems. And so please put the mind map up so I can speak a little bit about that.
And those of you who are listening in a podcast, you can go to www.drjudywtf and see it for yourself. .com, actually. drjudywtf.com.
So from a mind map...
drjudywtf.com. I can't speak today.
Okay, so from a mind map perspective, what happens to us as human beings is that we are disconnected from in one way or the other. Birth is a disconnector. And
certainly is.
Beyond that, there are many forms of disconnection, like when we are not attuned to by our family of origin, specifically our mother, caretaker. Then what happens if we don't get the basic ingredients for mental health, like breastfeeding, eye contact, skin contact, being available when the baby's needs are needing. When these things are not foundationally laid down, then what happens is it injures us emotionally, and it really cracks our perceptual lens. So what happens with a cracked perceptual lens is that our expectations are a little bit cracked up and a little bit distorted. And so what I mean by that is somebody who feels entitled might expect more, or somebody who doesn't feel that they're worth much might even expect less. So you could see that there's a blueprint going on here of expectations, and it starts at cause. The cause of all forms, or I will say most forms of inorganic psychopathology, is some kind of a human disconnection. So with that said, what also happens is that as a result of these disconnections and blueprints being laid down, we form what I call a negative core belief. And a negative core belief is our emotional Achilles heel. And this can be something like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not anything enough. And so how does this play in with expectations? Well, big time. Because what happens is that if someone is feeling that they're stupid, or somebody's feeling in some way that they're not good enough or not something enough, then they may be walking around with lowered expectations. And so therefore they might be putting up with forms of emotional treatment that really don't nourish them and don't help them grow as human beings. I mentioned the other side of the coin, when people are over spoiled, let's say, and when they're put to idealized up on a pedestal, they may have very, very high expectations of themselves and of others, and that turns into another nasty game, right?
I'm smiling because it's
Why are you smiling?
It's an infamous narcissist.
Yeah, we love that theme,
Oh,
right?
yeah, we sure do.
Okay, the
I
theme
do.
of narcissism. Okay, so narcissism is not what you think it is. It's not
No.
like I'm a snob, I'm better than you. It's actually an injury. It's
a
really,
huge
really
injury.
painful.
Yeah, it's a huge injury.
And narcissism can develop out of either being over tended to in a way that's unrealistic, where the child is made to feel that they're extra special, so that then when they go out in the world and the world reflects back to them that no, they're not, they get really, really upset. So there's an expectation right there.
And in reality, I think narcissism is the ultimate form, I think, of a defense mechanism.
Well, it's the narcissistic defense, which we've spoken about, but I see it in the office all the time. At length. And it's the demean, devalue, destroy. And whenever you, as a listener, spot someone who's trying to demean, devalue, or destroy you, you know that there's somebody behind the scene here in a blueprint way that's really, really injured, that's wanting to pull you into a system where you don't feel so good. Okay, so that's the dynamics of narcissism. So in this case, the narcissist might actually expect you to go along with their game, but when you don't go along with their game, then they'll throw you out of their system and try to hook somebody else into their system so that they can get esteemed, because they expect to be esteemed all the time. That would be a
and
great
I was
example.
talking to a friend who has realized their ex-husband was like radically a narcissist, and they resonated with the phrase from her narcissistic husband, ex-husband, "It's my way or the highway."
That's a big theme in therapy, my way or the highway. Well, what about panel 7, interconnection, where there's a sense of there's you, there's me, and then there's a negotiated space there. There's an area where we want to create a we and
an us, a we, absolutely,
us,
yes,
right?
an us.
So there's where the expectations in a relationship have to be really, really defined, because if they're not laid out very, very clearly, then people will have all kinds of fantasy expectations of each other.
And I've got some
which
information on that.
Right? They're the worst kinds, because I can't read your mind. You can't read my mind.
I got information on that too.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. We're so in tune.
We are. Let me dive in here. It says we all long for a sense of love and acceptance. We want to know that our existence has meaning and value to another person. When we're young, we depend on our caregivers, I thought you'd enjoy this one, for a sense of being loved unconditionally, and we learn from our caregivers how to or not to process our feelings. But of course, many of us didn't get all the things we needed to process emotionally. When things are vital things missing from our parenting we receive, we tend to sometimes, without even knowing it, look to our romantic partners to make up for these losses.
Which is filling the hole in the soul that we talk a lot about.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about this. Or on the other side, the need for sometimes we tend to make up for our own unmet needs by trying to be a caretaker of our partner.
Which was the codependency
and we just
episode,
had
two episodes that we did.
2 shows not too long ago on that, right?
Right, that bad deal where you give, hoping that there will be the pay time return, and it doesn't happen. And boy, does that really set people off.
It does. I mean, in that regard, we talked about your give in a glass that's got a big crack in it, and there's no way it'll ever overflow.
Right.
And you're expecting something in return, but yet all you're doing is giving.
Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if people spelled it out, if they were just more transparent, and we could talk to each other and say, I really expect you to do blah, 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 blah. So at least the person can know, and they can say, that's not reasonable. I don't think that I can do that. So please don't be hurt by my choice in not doing that. Or they could say, well, I can't do that, but I can do this. Would that help? Because ultimately, what we want to feel is we want to feel connection.
We do.
Why do we talk about healing human disconnect? Because we're so disconnected at this point within ourselves, within our relationships, within our community, and globally. And it all goes back to the blueprint of the first disconnect, which is the mother-infant disconnect, which Walt, you were just reading about.
Right.
And it's just so essential. It sets the whole tone for
expectations. Sets the foundation, the tone. But sometimes we don't know. A lot of it's communication. But if we don't know what we're feeling or what we really need and are unable to communicate it, and it's kind of more ingrained in us from childhood, it's kind of tough to break out that.
And then there are families, role models, where there's no communication, where the expectations are all in people's heads. And then, God forbid that you should trip up and not come through for one of these fantasy expectations, and then you never knew in the first place what they were thinking, so you have no way to fulfill on it, and it's a big mess.
I had an example of another friend of a fantasy expectation this week. Was they were on their second date and went to his house for dinner, and he was upset that she didn't bring her bag, and obviously expecting her to spend the night and have a little bit more of an intimate time on their second date. I usually talk to her right to the third one, but it's just kidding, folks. And so he had this expectation of more, and she was just trying to get to know the guy.
Now, wouldn't it be
in a more non-intimate way?
Well, how would that conversation have gone if he would have said, I expect you to come over to my house and sleep with me on this night? And she would say, well, then date over. Okay, so sometimes people don't speak their expectations because they want to see how far they can go with that particular
right. And
relationship.
he didn't have any. He didn't care whether she brought pajamas or not because she wasn't going to need them.
That's right. He was expecting that she wouldn't need them.
Precisely.
Right.
Footies or no footies.
I don't know.
So you're relying on your romantic partner to make up for the gaps in your parenting, or trying emotionally to provide for your partner's deficient parenting is a mistake that marriage and family therapists agree. So,
and that's an unconscious expectation.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But they talk about, as you mentioned, one is being mind. Us guys are blamed, I think, more than women of trying to be mind readers.
Yeah, women really, the main complaint by men is, well, I didn't know you thought that way. I didn't know. Why don't you just tell me? Because as we've spoken about before, men really do like directions.
Yes.
They really want to know how to please. And so if they're told how to please, then at least
there's a chance that
they can do it.
We always let it be pointed in the right direction, Jamie.
Yes.
Yesterday I met with a guy as his therapist talking about how disappointed he was with his wife. He told her this past weekend he and his wife both had the evening free, but when she came home, she really didn't pay any attention to him. Mm-hmm. It annoyed me, he said, so I got grouchy. Did you tell her you wanted to spend time with her, the therapist asked? Mm-hmm. Well, no. Mm-hmm. We both had the night off, so it should have been obvious.
Right? It was assumed, which we know assumed means what, Walt?
Well, assumed, I learned this long ago from actually there's a trailer of the Bad News Bears when Walter Matthau wrote it on the board, ASSUME. If you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. I always love that from Bad News Bears.
I love that one, yeah.
So in some cases, people want their partner to mind read. Which can often take from, I don't want to have to tell you what I want. She should already know. Right?
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll play devil's advocate for a minute. Okay, so if there are patterns and habits established, then I can see where assumed expectations can come in. Like if someone always makes the other coffee in the morning, then there's a pattern, there's a habit. So by not making that cup of coffee, in a sense, they've established this lifestyle, and so that kind of assumption, you can surely see that's kind of like something built into the protocol of their life.
I've got one that's similar. I had a friend who, when he was sick, when he was a kid, his mother would always bring him orange juice, right? Because he had a cold and needed more vitamin C or something. So he got married, and he got sick and got a cold, and he miraculously expected his spouse to come up with this gigantic glass of orange juice.
Sure.
But he had never told her that when I was sick, my mom would bring me orange juice.
Right.
And he had this ingrained expectation of just a glass of orange juice.
Sure.
And he was really bummed when it didn't materialize.
Yeah, because we play these scenarios in our head, and I guilty as charged. So someone will invite me somewhere, and I expect that there will be food there, or I expect that I'll be having a nice warm place to sit down, or I'll expect that there will be music or won't be music, or I'll expect that people will dress a certain way, and I'll have this whole vision of what it looks like, and then I'll get there, and it's neither good nor bad, but it may not be anything like what I expected.
Well, I always expect the person that brings the appetizers to be there early. They're always late.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, remember, if you're going to a party and you're bringing the appetizers, show up early.
So I point to the peaceful healing dialogue, because the peaceful healing dialogue is a way of dialoguing what you want and what your needs are, so that you can express your needs and you don't have to have fantasy expectations that then blow up in your face. So at my website, which is...
You can go to drjudywtf.com under forms, and it's there.
Right in the
it's all
forms
on one
tab.
Page. It's all on one page. It's colorful. And even if you only use a couple of things in it, right, you've already won and gotten ahead of the game of how to have a PhD, peaceful healing dialogue.
Right, and by the way, up on my website is the mind map and the explanation and
There's
bunch
a
of very
great
great blogs.
Right, one-page explanation of the mind map. It's terrific.
And
I should read it more often.
you can access the show through the
Yes.
system too.
Yes.
But speaking of the peaceful healing dialogue, it goes something like, I'll just make something up. Walt, when it's my birthday, then I expect that you're going to remember it. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Because if people don't do that, first of all, people have lives, right? People don't remember everyone's birthday and so on. And by the way, I'm having a birthday, so I said that on purpose. So I expect a big birthday cake, right? Marzipan, and then I expect, well, I'll give you the list, Walt. But
maybe not some guy popping out of the cake.
There's more. I have high expectations.
And we'd already talked about fantasy.
Oh, all of that. So, but it's this simple thing where I don't think people wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to let you down or I want to hurt your feelings. It's not that at all. It's just that we live in a society of overload of information, and sometimes it's just a nice thing not to set your friends up for failure and let them know so that they can fulfill and they can come through for you.
I have a couple of friends that have their anniversaries engraved on the inside of the wedding ring.
Aww.
So they don't forget. But of course, you have to look at the inside of the wedding ring and hopefully it hasn't been, rubbed off to know that. It's one of our wedding ring. The second part of, I just want to finish this little ditty here on expectations. The other one is responsibility for feelings. Okay. The other day, another patient came in and said, I don't like it when my husband spends time with his friends. He and I barely have time together as it is. And if he cared about me, he wouldn't go. Baseless woman feels that her feelings should take priority over her husband's feelings. If his interests cause her grief, then she should not pursue them. And he should not presume it.
That is such a common theme in therapy where people have these emotional wounds and these negative core beliefs like I'm not good enough and I'm not wanted. And damn to the person who will trigger that off. So if I expect that person to behave in such a corralled fashion that don't they dare touch my Achilles heel wound. So they better not look at another woman. They better not touch. They better not watch. They better not this, they better not anything. And then it's back to walking on eggshells, and it makes for a totally unsustainable system.
Oh, it does.
And it will break down.
And you better not look at another woman. I mean, you say it to some guy, it's like an ultimatum. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, I may look at one by accident. Now what?
Poke out your eyes. It's a very simple solution, right?
So there's a couple ways here. I've got several articles, but one here's how to manage your relationship expectations. And the first one is be open to those who don't fit, quote, your ideal. You got to be a little flexible.
Okay.
Right? We don't advise lowering your standards. You should only be around those who truly inspire you to become the best person possible, and should be someone who shares your love for whatever you're interested in. So. One small reason that's holding you back to see if you get past the reason to find a real connection with that person. In other words, you have this real high expectation and you're finding that these people don't meet it. I mean, and one of the things they talked about is if you're in a lot of relationships that are short, right? You meet the guy, you meet a gal, and things are going swimmingly, and then all of a sudden in a matter of months, it's like, this isn't working out for me, right? Then maybe your expectations are too high and you maybe have to reevaluate them.
I had a long conversation with a friend of mine yesterday about being in the moment. And so that when you're really present in the moment and you ask the person to be present with you and there are no expectations there, then you can just really grow from there. But if you have all these expectations, it's like these screens between you. And every time the other person fails to meet your expectation, it's like, zzz, done, you're done, you're done, and enough of these, you're done, you're done, you're done, and then there's a human disconnect there.
Huge.
Instead of the flow of the communication and being very present with the person.
I think you read this article, Dr. Judy.
Really? Am I doing the psychic thing
You're
with you
spot
again?
on. Second
we
of
didn't
three.
plan this, by the way.
Spot on.
I didn't even read these articles. I make him do it.
Yeah, I read them. That's absolutely true. The second one is leave your relationship room to grow. The best relationships happen organically.
Nice.
Is this cool?
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, okay. You've enjoyed it for what it really was, a new relationship with someone who you liked to be around. When you met somebody that was like in third grade, right? You just enjoyed them for being who they were. You really didn't have any expectations because you're just a kid, right? Only later did it blossom into something greater. Remember, the next time you meet someone new that you get excited about for the future, try not to fantasize about your new relationship before it has room to grow on its own.
Right. You don't need that template in the way, because when they show up and their eyes are not exactly, crystal clear blue like yours are, okay?
Thank
or
you.
their teeth are a little crooked, my big pet peeve, nice teeth. Okay, everybody has their pet peeve. So you put a template on them.
You like,
and they might
to bite into that one.
Yeah. But, everybody puts this template on the other person, and there may be so much beauty to that individual. And do you ever notice, Walt, that when you meet somebody for the first time and then you know them over, 5-10 years, you don't even really think about what they look like, because it's who they're being, and the essence of who they are is in the energetic connection that you have that really takes precedence over all of those other things. So, yeah.
And the third is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, it talks about that in the Bible. But when it comes to relationship expectations, how can you assume your partner will uphold every expectation you set for them if you don't follow their expectations as well? If you expect your partner to treat you with love, kindness, and care at all times, then you must do the same. Teach your partner, which again talks about communication, how to treat you by showing them the respect and attention that you would want as well.
Lead by example, you're saying?
Yes.
Yes. And it's true, we have to teach people how to treat us. They don't know. We don't, I remember when I gave birth to my son, my first son, I looked at him, I said, oh my God, he's so cute, but I don't know what to do with him. I don't know. I've never had this experience before. They don't come with instructions. So I didn't know what to do. And so I expected a lot from myself, though. I expected to know everything. And then, for those of you who are mothers, and there's a sense of, am I doing okay? So you expect all of this from yourself.
I think one of the best-selling books in that regard is before women have their baby, is the book infamously, and if you're a woman, you know exactly the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Right, that sounds.
And
I
it's
think
a great
that was
title,
probably...
and that book's been around for a long time, and it's
Yes.
like, wow, this it's all there.
I remember that dating site, or I think it was a dating service called Great Expectations.
Yes.
And I remember Saturday Night Live take on it. It was really, really funny. Everybody was so sick of these great expectations, right? So Saturday Night Live picked it up from there, and they had this beautiful song called Lowered Expectations. And you'd see people on the beach holding hands, and they were looking really funky, but it was all about, we're sick of these great expectations, because clearly nobody's really that super perfect, nor should we expect them to be, right?
Yeah, true. But we do expect you to call in if you're interested. We are
Yes, we do
Dr. Judy
expect.
WTF
That's
for
right.
What the Freud. We are here at the UBN Radio Network, and you can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes, and like us on Facebook. We really expect a few more likes. And if you want to call in, you sure can. Still, it's area code 323-843-2826. And I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and of course, Dr. Judy Rosenberg is in the house.
And when I think about the word expectations, I also think about a psychologist, I believe his name is David Meichenbaum, who said, don't should on me. Because when you should on people, you expect this and you expect that, and it's a very tight place to live. And it's a very judgmental, because part of my system is no blaming, shaming, criticizing, judging. So if you're expecting, you're coming from the consciousness of possibly doing all of the above: blaming, shaming, criticizing, judging.
Well, I've got another example for that one right here in my hand. This is an example of a couple, right? So the wife comes home and the husband's sitting there on their big couch eating this gigantic bucket of juicy barbecue chicken wings.
Okay.
And she's a bit perturbed by what she sees because she always wanted to be married to a healthy hunk. She secretly was resentful for his lack of self-discipline when it comes to maintaining his health. She usually acts out this resentment in her own way. She felt that he had stopped keeping himself up since he gotten married. And of course, the hubby had no idea. Conversely, he was frustrated at his wife nags him every little thing, picking out the trash, cutting the grass. She never politely asked him. Instead, she constantly nagged him. When are you going to put out the trash? When are you going to put out the trash?
But see, this is a case where you'd have to explore with her like many things, but for one, her core belief. Because if her core belief is she's not important enough to be number one, or not important enough to be worth helping, right? Then she might be interpreting all of this through the lens of her core belief, which may make it hard for her to ask for it, because there's that injury that she's not really important enough, so he's not really going to do it anyway. And so she takes it out in a more kind of a naggy, passive-aggressive way.
He's secretly also resentful of it because it causes other problems in the relationship as well. But what you bring up was interesting. When I was married, and I'm no longer, my wife would ask me to do things. I say, I'll get to it later today. And then I'd finally go to do it the same day, and she'd already have done it. And I got real frustrated because, well, if you were going to do it anyway, why in the world did you ask me to do it? Because I was figuring out how to make time and, to go do it. And it was, I didn't do it right that second, but goodness gracious, I did it, in a timely manner. And it got really frustrating.
So probably in her mind, she expected you to do it by a certain time, or maybe she expected you not to do it. So she'd do it herself. And so that would make for you probably to feel like, what am I, minced meat, or what am I, like not reliable, or then
Exactly.
It sets off that whole thing.
Right, and it happened a lot. I was like, okay, well, why bother to ask me to do anything, because you're going to do it.
Right.
But there are 7 tips in maintaining successful intimate relationships. I thought we'd dive into this one, since we all want more intimate, and we're trying to heal human disconnect, right? Hopefully we get all of these. Get in touch with and understand the needs which affect your reactions and behaviors in relationships. In other words, needs you are not aware of might be driving your reactions and your behaviors.
Okay.
For example, you'll be driven the need for love, which might be driven for you to be too submissive. Or you might have a need to be independent, which means it drives you to keep your distance. So that these needs are often affected the way we react and behave in our relationships.
It almost reminds me of these drives, for Freud and his drive theory, that we're driven by these basic needs. Well, he talked about hunger and sexual needs and so on, but it's true, they're unconscious, and when we have these unconscious needs and they're not brought to the surface and made conscious, then the communication may not be direct, because there's not a direct connection, because it's not conscious to what they're needing.
It's not conscious.
Right. So somebody might be sexually frustrated and not be in touch with that feeling, and then be making demands on another person just because they're taking it out on them and projecting on them.
And that's all you think about.
That's all I think about. Well, no, that's a projection. That's all you think about. All right. It's all both of what both of us think about. The truth be told.
Okay, maybe another show there. Okay. So when you become aware of your needs and become able to free yourself from the impact that you have over your reactions and behaviors, and you're able to behave with your partner in a healthy way. Okay. Second, understand the fears that drive your reactions and your behaviors, because we've all got fears. it's certain that you, like almost everybody else, has fears that you are unaware of which harm your relationships, such as fear of commitment, which may drive you to escape from every relationship you begin to develop, or fear of being alone, which may drive you to jump into every relationship with someone who just simply blinks. Or fear of losing your independence, which drives you to be controlling. Or lastly, fear of being hurt, which might drive you to being cautious with your partners and never dare to open up.
Which behind it is an expectation that you will be hurt. So the fear will be the defense mechanism, but all of these expectations, I will be hurt if I get too close, or if I get too close, then I might fall into a relationship that I don't really want to be and I'll be entrapped into that relationship. So all of these expectations, as opposed to being in the moment and really exploring that person and
again,
yourself with
letting
that
it grow
person.
organically.
Right. I love organics anyway.
Absolutely.
Organic emotions, organic
No
fruits,
GMOs.
Yeah.
Third, check whether your expectations are realistic. Okay? It's great to have expectations, but it's natural to expect your partner to be there for you at all times, to love you unconditionally, to always understand you, to always remember your birthday. It's great to expect that you and your partner will be good, but and sexually attracted to each other all the time. But your expectations are not. If your expectations aren't fulfilled, rather you'll get angry at your partner. Ask yourself whether your expectations are realistic and attainable. And you're obviously going to be disillusioned, angry, and frustrated, and obviously disappointed.
Right.
So, I mean, again, sometimes we may have to be a little more realistic or lower them or be a little more patient. I think a lot of times we're in a microwave society. We want it all right now.
I had many patients. I'm thinking about one in particular where the mother is very, very critical and set the bar really, really high for this individual. So his expectations were really, really high. And so it made it frustrating because he didn't want to lower his expectations and he didn't want to lower his standards. But he felt that he had to keep hitting the high note all the time, which pretty much
that's a lot of pressure.
Disempowered him because he got tired.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
So what he came up with is, how about a system where he doesn't have to lower his expectations or his standards, but that he can feel good about climbing toward them and not putting so much on, like there would be that ladder system.
Well, yeah, we talked about that.
Feel good about approaching it.
Yeah, and we talked about that earlier in the year about expectations. Let's say you wanted to lose weight, right? And you wanted to jog 5 miles, and you haven't jogged 5 feet. So the first week, all you're doing is you are putting on your clothes that you're going to go exercise with and walk out the front door.
You know what? I did what you said, and I didn't lose a pound.
Well, that's because you celebrated after simply doing that by eating a Krispy Kreme donut.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Secondly, then and then the next week you might want to put your clothes on, walk out the front door, and maybe walk to the end of the block. Okay, and the third week, maybe you go 4 or 5 blocks, and then the next week, maybe you run 1 block. So in other words, the point is, you don't set yourself up for failure. You just have really very tiny baby step expectations.
Gradual.
And you're not going to jog 5 miles overnight anyway. So what if it takes you 6 months to jog 5 miles? It's a goal, and you keep at it, and you don't set yourself up for failure, and you meet all your expectations because they're kind of lowered and in bite-sized pieces.
But you don't mean that it'll take me 6 months to jog the 5 miles, right?
No.
Okay.
Of course not.
Okay. I was just kind of setting up what the expectations should be of myself about that, but okay.
Third is, and you've already talked about this one, ensure that your fantasies are realistic, right? Fantasies are part of life, and you may fantasize that your love will just be like the movies, that your partner will supply all your needs, the two of you will do everything together and never fight, and that you'll always agree on everything. And I've always said if both of us agree on everything, one of us is unnecessary. But of course, that's unrealistic and could harm the relationship. So you want to entertain fantasies which actually realistically can materialize.
And, I was just thinking about a particular topic just because I'm going to be on a show in the near future about plastic surgery, and I was really honored to be the psychologist for that particular episode.
Can you name at least a network?
I mean, it's going to be on E-Entertainment. I could say that. I can't say anything else about it. And I'm going to be doing some more filming around it in the next couple of weeks. But it's like with plastic surgery, people have certain expectations. And so I think it's really, really important when we're going into situations such as this that we really, really consult with the physician that's going to be performing the surgery. This is a perfect example of expectations, and the person has this perfect image of what their nose is going to look like or what their breasts are going to look like, but then they're really disappointed that it's not exactly the mirror image of their imagination. So these are the instances, especially around really, really big decisions in life, where you have to be really, really careful, and you have to define things, and you have to give some sort of a latitude for, well, look, this is human skin, so it may come out like this, it may come out like this. We don't know exactly how you heal. We don't really know your scar, the way you scar. So that's an example, but I think it's a good example because we really, really need to understand what we're putting out there in terms of expectations, or else we're going to have very big reactions to things.
It's true,
and possibly fall into the hole of
being very, very disappointed.
Despair.
Yeah. There's a book out, folks, that Judy just talked about, which actually is one of the foundations of the self-help industry, which was written in the early 60s by a guy named Maxwell Maltz. It was called Psycho-Cybernetics.
I remember
And he was a
yeah.
German plastic surgeon. He started plastic surgery really, really early. And he came to the United States and New York, and he would do plastic surgery. And he would realize the job he did was just unbelievable. Maybe it was a nose job, for example, on a lady.
Yeah.
And he'd hold up the mirror, and isn't this amazing? And he realized the patient didn't see the difference. I mean, he'd physically changed their appearance, and they said, I can't tell any different. And he realized it was more internal than external.
Right, and there's that person's core belief.
Yes.
I'm imagining she sees herself as ugly. And no matter what anybody does to her, she'll always see herself as ugly. And I think that's what he was referring to.
Absolutely. And he wrote a great book, and it was re-edited. It was a better book by Dan Kennedy later on. But if you want to learn more about that, it's a really, really great read. Fifth, understand the messages which drive your interactions with your partner. Messages you internalized while growing up affect your attitudes. And we've talked about that incessantly. Reactions and behaviors without you even being aware of it. For example, you might have been exposed to your family or a society in which you grew up to messages such as, a woman should do everything for her partner.
And there's the should. Right?
Yeah, there's a should. Women should do everything for her partner, driving you as women not demand a mutual give and take with their partner.
Yeah.
Okay, or men don't do housework, meaning driving the man means he never participates in doing housework chores. Compromises are most important in life, driving you the need to insist on what's important to you. And then lastly, self-sufficiency comes before relationships and family.
But see, these nice little log lines or logos or whatever people put out there are very self-serving, because they want to put out this huge billboard message that women, men don't do housework. Well, do you think a woman put that out? Right?
Absolutely
not. So there's almost like this campaign, right? Men don't do housework. So somehow they think that if they say it, then they can not only create something there along the line of what they think is a reasonable expectation, but then get other people on board this expectation. So now we've got somebody who has an expectation and wants to get other people to join him to support his expectation. Right.
Yes.
And then it becomes kind of like a cultural expectation, and it's just hard to get away from it because I told you, see, everybody knows.
And be willing to take responsibility for your part of the problem and differences which arise between you and your partner. I think this is a big one. I mean, it's like, well, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything. There are many who never admit they may be wrong. They fight with their partner just to prove they're right. This only escalates the problems, of course. So be more willing to take responsibility for your part in the problems and difficulties which arise. And taking responsibility shows that you just might be wrong.
Well, that's, a system that's doomed. The right, wrong, good,
Yes.
bad, that is another unsustainable system. And a system that is more sustainable is when you can self-reflect, you can self-correct, you can communicate, you could state your needs up front, you can renegotiate things within the context of a relationship. So what I'm saying is that there's more of an interconnectedness kind of system as another option for the good, bad, right, wrong, fault, blame, blah, blah, which sets up a lot of chaos, defenses, and breakdowns.
And we've just got a couple more minutes before we can do our song, because
Okay.
this has been a fast hour. But, again, talk about healthy communication. Be realistic and communicate. I mean, nobody's a mind reader, and it's gotten me in trouble of what I expect. So, you might want to own your own feelings by using I statements, right? I feel neglected when you don't see, we won't see each other for weeks at a time, right? As opposed to you don't spend any time with me, right?
And feelings can never be wrong. They're just your feelings. That doesn't mean the person has to now jump and fulfill them, but you get to say how you feel.
And as a result of that, negotiate and compromise.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, when I first got married, I was talking to someone earlier today about, my wife would do some things one way and I would do the same thing differently. So now we had to figure out what our way was.
Right.
Right? So we negotiated and compromised. Maybe the thing that we were doing is her way or my way, but now it has to become us, our way.
Interconnection.
And it's very interconnected. And that was it was really a revelation. So if you have some expectations and you'd like us to try and meet them, you can write us at info@drjudywtf.com, or you can go on Facebook and go to Dr. Judy WTF on Facebook and send us a message and like us along the way. Of course, you can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes, and here, of course, at UBN Radio Network here at the Sunset Gower Studios, which is always a thrill to get here.
And also I wanted to mention, for those of you who are wanting therapy at the Psychological Healing Center, I have some wonderful therapists, psychological assistants, interns, and we have people that work on sliding scale basis.
Yes, very much
and
so.
telecommunication, therapy over Skype, over the telephone. So please do feel free to call us, get information. We're happy to send you information and match you with a therapist that is appropriate for you on all levels, psychologically and budget-wise.
And if you can hear this voice, you can call and get help. If you have an ouch, you might just want to get on the couch with Dr. Judy. Emotional ouch. Get on the couch with Dr. Judy. It's time for our Shrink That Tune here at Dr. Judy WTF, and we're doing one by special request. It's by the Beatles, entitled Don't Let Me Down.
Speaking of a song about expectations, Don't Let Me Down.
Yes, indeed. So I'm going to read the lyrics, and then Dr. Judy's going to interpret it, and we're going to close out with a song. Don't let me down, don't let me down, don't let me down, don't let me down. No one ever loved me like she does. Oh, she does. Yeah, she does. And if somebody loved me like she do me, oh, she do me. Yes, she does.
So this is somebody who obviously doesn't want to be let down and now thinks that they found somebody that can absolutely not let them down. They're amazing. No one has ever loved me like this person has loved me, which is, again, the idealization, which is a perfect setup for what? For being let down.
Don't let me down. I'm in love for the first time. Don't you know it's going to last? It's a love that lasts forever. It's a love that has no past.
Sure, right. Speaking of idealistic expectations, right? I'm in love for the first time, so it's already an ideal situation because they've already seen Romeo and Juliet, so they know, and all of the love stories. So, of course, they expect it's going to last forever.
Boy,
and there's almost a magical thinking quality. I
Yes.
don't have to work. It's just, it's my first love. It's just going to, and it's a love that has no past because there's no darkness there. It's just a clean slate of clean love, potential.
Clean love. What a
Yeah,
concept.
potential.
Boy, what pressure.
I'm feeling it.
Don't let me down. And for the first time that she really done me, oh, she done me good. I guess nobody ever really done me. Oh, she done me good.
So this person's idea of a relationship is that she do him really good, and that everything that comes out of her is good for this other person. But I don't hear anything about. Well, the song's short, okay, but I don't hear anything about any kind of negotiations here.
No, there's
I do for her, she does for me. No, it's like she doesn't let me down. He doesn't, it's all about me, 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 me. It's doing to me. It's for me.
Is that like 68? You do me and I owe you one?
Oh, I never heard it put that way. Okay.
Don't let me down. Hey, don't let me down. Don't let me down. And that's basically, can you dig it? Don't let me down. So
Yeah.
there's your expectations.
Yeah.
Don't Let Me Down
Don't let me down.
by the Beatles. So we hope we haven't let you down with the show, and there'll be another one next week. Thanks so much for listening. Our audience is still growing, and we really appreciate every one of you and all the comments and requests you send. Again, info@Dr. Judy WTF. I'm Walt Lusk, and we're now going to play our Beatles song and close out with the show. And thanks for listening, everybody.